Welcome to the PDX files. Each week we dive into the weird and the unexplained here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. My name is Peej.
And I'm Mac.
And Mac, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're gonna get. I mean, as you can kind of see there, is kind of crazy. Is the it's the philosophy of the multiverse, but just the thought of it. And I think as we get into this video, you're going to see it's a little different from what you may have expected.
Oh yeah?
Oh
Like
yeah,
things that the Marvel universe has not explained to me yet?
yeah. The marvelous universe has been great. I almost kind of think that what's that one with Leonardo DiCaprio where the things are like it's like
Inception.
Inception. Yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of. I know that kind of looks like that there, but I think I'm really open to this topic, and I think that there's a lot to be said with this particular video. You're going to find out it's not all about the movie part, but it actually kind of supports some of the movie part as well.
All right. Well, as usual, I have not seen this video, so my responses will be pretty authentic. Here we go.
I think it's really important when we're thinking about physicists' versions of the multiverse to realize physicists never start out by saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there were a multiverse? It is always the place they're dragged to kicking and screaming because they're trying to explain what we do observe. A big criticism of multiverse ideas is that you can't observe the multiverse. You can't falsify it, you can't test it, etc. But what you can do is observe what happens in ours. And what you want to do as a scientist is come up with a theory, which is a kind of a story, a theory that accounts for what we see, for the data that we can have access to. And some theories, some very, very simple, very easy to write down theories, like the inflationary theory of cosmology or the many worlds theory of quantum mechanics, they both explain what we see in our universe and unambiguously predict the existence of other universes. In cosmology, which is maybe the most famous one up until recently, there's literally just parts of our universe that are so far away where conditions can be radically different. They can either be kind of like us, but with different details, or even different laws of physics, different particles and forces and the whole shebang. There's an entirely different conception called the many worlds of quantum mechanics, which is both in some sense more realistic and easy to bring into reality, but also more mind-blowing. It just says whenever you have a quantum mechanical system, which, spoiler alert, all systems are quantum mechanical at heart, but whenever you measure it in a particular way, you can get different possible measurement outcomes. This is something we've understood for 100 years now. The question is, what happens to the alternative measurement outcomes that you didn't observe?
I can honestly tell you that was a little bit of a blah, 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 ginger, blah, blah, blah moment for me from the Far Side comics.
Wow,
I
you didn't get into that, man. I was
listen.
like,
I
okay.
was following up to this to a point until he started talking about quantum mechanics, and even though we
I love
talked
quantum
about that little
mechanics.
bit in I think the gin, we talked a little bit
The gin particle, yeah,
uh,
exactly, yeah.
quantum mechanics there. But anyway,
The link will be in the description for that one. But what I like about that is, I did have to take certain classes in college to be able to graduate, and one of the ones I took was cosmology 101. Clearly, I mean, look at me, come on, not
well,
gonna
yeah,
lie,
because you
but
thought you were going to cosmetology, but
yeah,
went to the wrong.
yeah, right, exactly. Well, but some of the stuff I learned in there and the implications there were amazing. And so, sort of listen to this dude here. What we're talking about is like, is the multiverse real, and how can it be explained? And it can really only be explained through quantum theory. Honestly, I think, at least in my opinion, anyway. Being a non-scientist, just being a civilian, I guess, if you look at it that way. And so I think I agree. It's kind of it's a rough intro, but I followed every bit of that, and so I'm thinking I'm hoping that some of our viewers will be able to follow that as well.
Well,
I'm
I
sorry
do
you
appreciate.
look like
Yeah,
you didn't get it. Yeah.
I do appreciate the point that he made about like real scientists feel like they're needing to be dragged into the topic of multiverse because it's not something that they can easily explain, or or the way I interpret it is that they'd rather explain it in this other way, like in quantum mechanics.
Well, I think people want to explain it in their own way that they've learned how to come up with. I mean, even if you look at your own profession, like you're kind of used to doing your own things in the way that you've been taught, right? So you can only go so far with that unless you're open to different ideas and innovation, and that's how things move
No,
forward. So that's kind of how I see it, anyway.
yeah, no, there truly is only one way to flip a burger, to be honest. But why don't we continue and move on here?
Let's do it.
So if you have a particle, an elementary particle like an electron, and you're going to observe its location or its spin or something like that, the equations will tell you that certain outcomes are possible, certain outcomes are not. An electron is never going to turn into a proton. They have different electrical charges. That will literally never happen. But the electron could be spinning either clockwise or counterclockwise. And the many worlds version of quantum mechanics says both of those will generically come true in different universes. So this is literally a parallel universe. This isn't some place very, very far away. This is a simultaneously existing reality where the outcome of a quantum mechanical experiment turned out differently to ours. And if big noticeable things in the world depend on the outcome of that experiment, you could wind up in a very different looking universe.
Maybe not like that. Hopefully, I wouldn't want to live in that universe. That doesn't look like a fun place to live. But kind of the way that I've always sort of understood is like if you play a game of chance, you flip a coin a certain number of times, you're going to get the same outcome over the course of those numbers of, certainly with a deck of cards, right? That's even more than like just sort of flipping a coin. Like you're going to get certain similar outcomes in that on an infinite basis. So like you and I are probably having this discussion in another universe and multiple times over because of the multiverse type theory. It could go on forever, right? So that to me makes a lot of sense. It's like because you've seen, and it might explain things like deja vu, right? It might explain things that we're kind of ready for. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry to say deja vu again, but I've seen this before. I've been there. Or you have a sense of that happening out there, or you have hope. It's like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still here talking about this somehow.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this before.
I think it's a different show, but yeah.
No,
or a different bar.
Yeah, I think the obviously the thought about multiverse versus and parallel universes, it's it's quick compelling, and I'm definitely interested in it. The challenge has always been for me is that, and it's not going to be me, is I need it to be proven. Like there needs to, how do we get to the proof? Outside of
It's in the pudding.
outside of what people see on the screen here, you've got a cityscape on the bottom part of the screen, and then a wooded kind of foresty area on the upper part of the screen that's meant to be, hey, if these were the same plants but existing on different worlds, they could have developed in different ways, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yep.
So, again, it's tough for me to be able to fully believe it, unless there is some sort of like, that show Fringe, some way to finally actually cross over into the other universe and experience new a new way that existence is happening, right?
Well, and I think they actually did do a fairly decent job of sort of describing the implications of doing that.
Oh yeah.
One, it's the sheer amount of power you would have to generate to do it, and two, what it would do it would sort of disintegrate the boundaries between the two universes, and so you would have like essentially like an epic apocalypse and a destruction of two universes.
Well,
So
or-
that's something I don't want to sign up for.
no, I don't want to sign up for that either. And if that is the consequence of it, forget about it. Maybe I don't want
Forget
to.
about it.
Maybe I don't want to discover or be part of this whole venture of proving the multiverse.
The problem is I would have is if I met my other self, I'd have to punch him in the face, probably just because. So
but to be honest, it's the other self who would punch you in the face because it's like, what the hell?
we're thinking the same way. We both punch each other, like, oh, yeah, it'd be
And
fantastic.
it's like, wait, is your life a mess too? But anyway, all right, let's continue.
Almost certainly.
Human beings love to put themselves at the center of every story. So when you start talking about the multiverse and different ways things could have gone, they instantly start thinking, oh, if I had made a different decision, things would have turned out differently. And that's fine if you're just being philosophical and thinking about the space of all possible ways the world could have gone. But if you're thinking like a physicist, you solve the equations. It has literally nothing to do with human beings making decisions. If you think about the cosmological multiverse, the other universes are literally billions of light years away. They have nothing to do with you and your choices throughout the day. The quantum mechanics multiverse is a little bit of a different story because it does happen sort of everywhere. There's things going on that create two parallel realities. But the things that are going on are not human beings making decisions. They're subatomic particles being measured in some quantum mechanical way. If anything, it's the quantum measurements that force you to make a decision, not your decisions forcing different universes to come into existence. After all, you are a body made of a whole bunch of quantum mechanical particles, electrons and protons and neutrons. If you choose to describe yourself that way, there are different versions of you branching the universe. So then you have to ask, well, if I could have seen the electron spinning clockwise or counterclockwise and I saw it spinning counterclockwise, what is my relationship to the person who saw it spinning clockwise? Are they me, just in a different universe, or are they a separate person? I think the clear answer here is there's a relationship, but they're a different person. It's very much like identical twins. You have one fertilized egg. There's at one point in time a single cell that is one entity there in the universe, but it splits into two different people. I think that's how we should think about different versions of ourselves in the multiverse. They might share a past, but once they've diverged, once they're in a universe of their own, they are now separate people. It's not weird or impossible to contemplate. It's just a slightly more sophisticated version of our notion of personal identity updated for the multiverse.
And see, that to me right there is like what he just said, all of that right there resonates with me for sure. It's like, it's not you, the same person out there doing it. And it's not you making a conscious decision to like create a different reality. It's just fucking happens. And it is much like, even if with a identical twin, they're not the same person. They're different. They have their own things that they do, aspirations. Maybe they physically look alike and have the same kind of metabolism and those types of things. And he's the same person at the end of the day.
Yeah, the way that was explained in terms of, especially with the twins, in terms of whatever, like something the electronics in our body, for lack of a better term, are the ones.
Electrons. Yeah.
The electrons in our body are what determines the being, right? So
Right.
that versus any kind of decisions, versus any kind of sliding doors or another Earth. These are movies that I'm referencing, moments that are based on decisions we make, right?
Like a
And
butterfly effect kind of deal.
even I don't know. I'm gonna make a Marvel universe here. So even in the Avengers Endgame, where the Doctor, what the hell is his name?
Strange.
Doctor Strange said something like in every possibility
Yeah, it's
every
like 700
possibility.
million that he looked at, 14 million or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. The results were the same except for one, right? Or something. But anyway, and that was kind of like, so to me, the way I'm interpreting that is because in that one where they won, Iron Man decided to do what he decided to do, right? So
Right.
it's I don't know. I'm still convinced. I get what the science. I think he's a scientist, right? I get what he's saying, and I hear it. And fundamentally, of course, it's correct. Um, I'm still enamored with the multiverse existing because of the many decisions that we make on a even on a subconscious level.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
All right, we'll continue here.
I absolutely believe we can imagine thinking about the multiverse as a useful psychological tool or personal tool, right? Visualization exercises have been part of psychology for a long time. And so when we physically imagine ourselves embodied in a different set of circumstances, we think about that possibility differently. And the multiverse is sort of a nudge in that direction. And maybe you can argue that technology these days is making that more possible.
Hollywood
We
theater.
see other lives in a more vivid way than maybe we used to, with virtual realities, with alternate ways of thinking about ourselves, augmented reality, just wearing a headset in the world that we're in. Apparently, there's a whole genre of Zillow porn, which is not actually pornography. It's just getting kicks out of looking at houses you can't afford on Zillow and
Ah,
imagining what it would be like to live there. We're sort of peeking into alternate realities that didn't come true. These could be both positive and negative psychological tools if we use them in the right way by imagining the way things could have gone better and then saying, okay, what do I need to do to increase the chances that next time it actually will go better? But it's psychologically not healthy to push that too far because there are some decisions we can't undo. This is why we talked about the serenity prayer, right? The ability to recognize what we can change, what we can't, and accept the things that we can't, as well as to be able to tell the difference.
I don't like that prayer very much, but I do. I mean, but unfortunately, it is pretty accurate. Oh, there goes my chair again. Yes, that's what we get. Good Lord. Anyway, I'm shorter now than I was a second ago. But yeah, I mean, if you look at that, I understand the philosophical part of that, right? And the sort of acceptance of that. There's not much you can do to influence anything as far as that goes. And, but there might be from that thought experiment other places and times that you've done better. And, maybe you want to try to do better at the point where you're at and, you know, use it as a motivator, maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thought that you know, and again, I'm going to harken back to that movie. Actually, there's a movie called Another Earth, where and this was, I don't know, I don't have it on my screen anymore, but it's an old movie, and basically the premise is this: the main character, something happens in her life, in her current life, but then there's literally another Earth, all of a sudden becomes into view, kind of like when you look up in the sky, you see this other
You
Earth,
see another.
and they were successful at sending somebody from their Earth to the other Earth, so making contact. And so she wanted to go to that other Earth to see if her life was different there.
Mm.
Her version of herself on that other Earth is different. If it so it's kind of again, it's kind of like almost aspirational in a sense that, hey,
Yeah.
if your life right now, if you feel like your life is not perfect, or if even if it's fine, but you feel like if it's something that could be better, the thought that there's another version of you that could have that life right now is kind of enticing.
Yeah. It's kind of a comforting thing. And I think that if you relate it to like science and my theory, just really really the possibilities that they've come up with is way more really comforting and, as you said, enticing than it is religion. I'd rather rely on that, knowing that there's somebody else out there that's like me that's doing better. Family members who have passed maybe too soon or are living their best lives, right?
Yeah.
Friends of yours who you really want to do well are doing better, and I think that's a way better way of looking at life, I think, than trying to escape hell or trying to get to heaven.
But it's still a little escapism, isn't it, though?
Oh,
If
of course, yeah.
Hey, if you're saying, hey, I'd love to, there's another universe where, my grandma Corazon is still alive, or, and living to, like you said, her best life, even though at this point she would be 112 years old. So I don't.
Yeah, and I don't think that exempts us from the responsibilities that we have here, right? I mean, even if there's nothing beyond this, which I don't believe, but if say that if we're just looking at that, say the universe just keeps rolling on, and you your flame lights, and then it goes out, and that's all there is. The fact that there are other versions of yourself that are very similar, you'd probably be able to relate to. You can have a drink with or not, and if they don't drink, whatever it happens to be, knowing that that other opinion is there, that other voice in your head, I think is kind of cool thing.
Yeah. All right. We'll continue here.
You can imagine in a multiverse having made all sorts of different decisions. But in fact, there's no such thing as time travel in the real world. You cannot actually go back and remake the decisions differently. It's fine to imagine all sorts of possibilities, but at the end of the day, we have to live and affect the universe that we're in. I like to think, maybe I'm being a physicist here more than a human being, but I like to think that by contemplating all of these different possibilities, past, present, and future, we can put things in perspective. We can think about how, yeah, there was that moment when things went terribly wrong. Either maybe I did something wrong, or there was an unforeseen event that I couldn't have controlled. But you know what? The causal influence I have on the world only extends toward the future. The choices I can make right now will have an impact that I will feel down the road, but I cannot make a choice right now that undoes what happened in the past. I think this is a truth about physics and cosmology and the world, and psychologically it's a very important principle to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean,
Reach.
100%. Everything he just said right there, like everything we do doesn't because there might be another version of us out there, doesn't exempt us from the responsibility that we have to the place that we are now.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a pretty good message, and a pretty good way to look at it. Even if you're skeptical of the multiverse theory or all the work that and evidence of it that we actually have, not necessarily, you got to separate it from the Marvel thing, right? You got to look at the actual math that and that's gone into it. And so when I look at it that way, I think it's way more hopeful to me that there is maybe a better version of myself, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can't do the best I can here, right? And none of us should look at it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was meant to be preachy, but that was a good message at the end of the video there, because
Yeah,
in a way, especially when we're talking about, I mean, I think much of what I've thought about the multiverse being a potential, not necessarily solution, but the multiverse existing in such a way that there are decisions that I made along the way have created all these other universes, right? And then of course decisions that are being made in those other universes have created just a multitude of universes. But I like the way that he who was saying what he was saying there towards the end in terms of, especially like if you do come, like when I do come to a decision point, um, and there are many, but conscious decision point, a question that I could ask myself is, when I make this decision, could I live with myself? You know what I mean? And so it's not
right.
necessarily, it's almost a question of good versus bad, but it's more like, can I live with this decision? You know,
Yeah,
and and
and
am I going to end up regretting this decision? If the answer is yes, then make the other decision, make the alternate decision.
right, and I think that its basic form, that's what we should all be doing. But that doesn't guarantee that, for instance, another version of ourselves makes the right decision, and it doesn't do things that are not good. But that's for their journey, right? But
Yeah,
so that's why I believe the infinite reality kind of thing, the chance. It's like are you gonna draw a royal flush? You're gonna get that. Yeah, you can do it again at some other point. Are you gonna crap out and play the game? Yeah, all these different things happen. And probably have happened in different universes and different areas. But all we can control is what's the here and the now,
yeah.
which I wish I could control everything. That'd be amazing. But unfortunately, that's not
Well, let me
reality.
try something real quick.
Yes.
No, you didn't disappear. Okay. Well, if you enjoy this content, please give it a like and share it across your socials to help get the word out about our show. If you hadn't already done so, please subscribe. And on YouTube, hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.